Hi, I'm Tina, founder and chief number cruncher of Accounting Pros, and I'm here today to explain how you can apply for and receive a COVID-19 disaster loan for your small business. During this lesson, you're going to learn about the loan limits and the terms, the eligibility, the application process in full, and documentation and expectations. I've actually gone through the entire process and have made sure that you know what to do every step of the way. So first of all, the COVID disaster loan has some limits. The lower limit is $25,000. The upper limit is $2 million. And these loans need to be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other operating expenses that you would not be able to pay due to coronavirus, aka COVID-19. And there are some limits on the interest, which is really good for you as a small business owner. If you are a for-profit business, you have a max rate of 3.5%. and you have a long time to pay it back. So your term can be at maximum 30 years, which is really good for you as a small business owner. It's also important to note that the SBA will be deferring payments for the first 12 months. So you have a year to begin paying on this disaster loan. There's also no cost to apply. The government or any other company should not be charging you to apply for an SBA loan because you've already paid in for this sort of program to the government with your taxes. And if you are accepted for a loan, you do not need to actually take it. So if you decide that you want to self-fund the business or business picks up, or you've got other funding opportunities and you'd like to release your funds to somebody else, all you have to do is tell the SBA that you do not want to keep the loan or get it at all, and you're not obligated to it. And if you're wondering what sort of loan the SBA is going to provide to you, they're going to be looking at your financial statements to understand what your operating expenses are, and they should be able to provide up to 6 months of operating expenses as your loan amount. So it's really important that you have a clean set of financials so that the SBA can evaluate what sort of lending they need to provide to you. And they have some limitations for the type of businesses that they will not accept. And all this information is on the SBA site, but typically if your business is around gambling, where you're receiving 1/3 or more of your revenue in gambling revenue, you will not be qualified. This includes things like casinos and racetracks where the main purpose is gambling. Also, if you're a sexually oriented business, you're likely to be declined. Pawn shops, if 50% of your revenue is earned by earning interest, you'll likely be declined. Religious organizations will be declined, and investing and lending companies. Charitable nonprofits, but not private nonprofits, will be declined. Speculative activities and agricultural enterprises. And the reason that ag is exempt, it's because it is covered by the Department of Agriculture, not the SBA. And you might be wondering if you would even qualify for an SBA loan, especially if you've had some problems paying your bills over the last month or so. And the SBA does take this under consideration. So what they're really looking for is your credit history and having it acceptable to the SBA prior to the coronavirus. So if you've had some trouble paying in the last couple of months, but previously, you've been on time with your bills, you've not had any late payments or finance charges or anything, for those late payments, you should be okay. And of course, I'm not an SBA representative, I'm an accountant, so I'm just taking what they're saying on their website and in their documentation with a grain of salt. But I would say that generally, if you're an on-time payer with a reasonable credit score, you should have a good chance of receiving this disaster loan. They're also going to be looking at cash flow in the business. So, it's understandable that cash flow might be low right now because you don't have customers coming in the door, or you might have some kinks in your supply chain. But if over the last year or so, the business was generally cash flowing pretty well, and you would have been able to pay back your debts, if coronavirus had never happened, then you're really likely to be approved for this type of loan. You also need to be located in a disaster area. And so what I understand from the SBA, all 50 states should be in the disaster area. However, once you do apply and you actually set up your account with the SBA, you'll be putting in your address of the business. And so it's going to be city, state, and county. And, once you get to that point, it'll say yay or nay, whether or not you're eligible. So they are, of course, the final say on what the disaster zones actually are. You also need to show that your business is suffering due to the disaster. So this is going to be a reals not feels situation where you need to be able to show what percentage of revenue, you've lost because of coronavirus, what you've been, if you have had no foot traffic, if you've had no customers be able to come and actually go to your restaurant or place of business, and how that's affected your top line and bottom line. Maybe you've had some issues with your supply chain, actually getting your products to the US or from other manufacturers within the US. So you really need to be able to substantiate your losses and be very clear about, what was my business before and this is the reality now. And you need to be in business at least 1 year prior to the disaster. I've only noted this because Form P019 asks that question. So my assumption is, based on that question, you must be in business at least 1 year. There's a lot of, chatter around about what would potentially disqualify you. I've heard a lot about, I have the ability to access capital, therefore, in other sources, therefore I might be disqualified. Well, I've been reading a lot with the SBA and actually listening to their presentations. And in their presentations, they've been very clear that you can have access to capital already, and you can have current loans. And normally if you've got a working capital loan, it's not normally 6 months of your operating expenses. So there's going to be a shortfall between what your capital currently is, whether it's loans or lines of credit or other ways of getting capital other than revenue. And so what they're going to really be looking at is your need. And if you have a current 7A loan, which is the normal SBA loan, or a disaster loan, that does not disqualify you from having a disaster loan now. If you have a current disaster loan, your lender or the SBA should be reaching out to you because it can be deferred until end of year. And if you have a current 7A loan or a microloan, you can request a 6-month deferral. Now I have a little asterisk there, and it's important to note that if you do request a deferral on your loan, you will continue to accrue interest. So it's not interest-free until the end of the year or for 6 months. You need to know that you're still going to have those interest amounts tacked on to your loan. And finally, if you do not have collateral, which is the case in lots of professional services organizations, you will likely not be declined. They're just going to ask for a personal guarantee. So it's, of course, better if you've got equipment and, land or real estate or anything that you can collateralize, but it's understandable that you might not have that. So just don't feel like you shouldn't apply if you don't have collateral for your business. And this is everything that you're going to need, according to the SBA, what you'll need to provide to them when you're applying for your loan. And keep in mind, your loan application can be made online, so all of these forms can be filled out. You don't have to download anything and fill it in by paper and hand it to somebody. There are some instances where you do need to download some documents, but you can instantly re-upload them to the SBA site. But let's just go through this list here. So number 1, you'll be filling out the SBA Form 5. That's really the disaster loan application that goes through everything about you and your business. Number 2 is the personal financial statement, and we'll be going through what's entailed in that form. But you're going to need to provide anything about yourself or any other owners in the business with substantial interest in the business. You'll also need to provide a schedule of liabilities. They want to know who you owe money to in the business. And then you'll need to provide the disaster loan supporting information, that P019, and we'll go through what questions are on that form later. You'll also need to be able to provide your taxes to the SBA, and you're not actually going to be giving them the tax forms. You're going to give them a form so that they can request those directly from the IRS. And then you'll need to have the Truth and Information Certification signed. And finally, you might be required to provide additional information to your SBA representative. So this might be things like profit and loss, balance sheet for current year, prior year, etc. You may need to provide additional documentation to substantiate your losses. So be ready with that. Don't wait to get all these sorts of things done because you want to be able to get the approval really quickly and then funds in the bank really quickly. And I can't say this enough, you really need to get your shit together before you start. If you don't have everything ready and you've gone through the very lengthy application process and you're missing some piece of documentation or you're just not ready, you could potentially be kicked back to the back of the line. And the line right now for these types of loans is incredibly long. I highly recommend that you apply, after normal business hours, like in odd times of the night or early in the morning, because even getting things through their system, it's really, really slow. So don't make a mistake and, not be ready for this. Start working on your financials with your accountant right now if you don't have one. The SBA has some resources, which I'll link below, so that you can actually have somebody rebuild your financials or prepare your financials for you. They have a free process or program for that. That being said, if you have to have somebody like a volunteer help you with that, it's going to lengthen the process. So if you're already working with a bookkeeper or an accountant or really anybody who can help you put that all in one spot, start now. And again, make sure that you can substantiate, what did business look like in 2019 and what is 2020 like? And again, make sure that you're taking your time. Read every single question on the application in full. Make sure that you completely understand what they're asking, so that you don't put wrong information in the wrong box, or you're not, over or under reporting revenues or losses. Be really clear about what's in there, because your application is what they're going to be using to approve or deny you for this loan. And again, I'm going to say this 1,000 times in this video: substantiate, substantiate, substantiate. You've got to have records of whether or not this has actually affected your business. There are many, many other business owners out there, and really we need to be sure that everybody is treated fairly and providing all the information to make an educated decision about whether or not your business would qualify for this loan. So make sure you've got your ducks in a row. Take your time and document the heck out of it. And when it's time to apply, you can go online to disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. You can call the 800 number, 800-659-2955 if you have questions. You can also email disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. But please understand, they have a lot of people calling them right now and emailing them right now. Your best bet is to probably find the information online, ask me, look at the information on their disaster loan site. As of this morning, the SBA loan portal was down, and I'm seeing that they were having long bouts of system maintenance. They're actually supposed to be done at 6 a.m. Eastern time, and it's like, 10:30 Mountain time right now. So they're way beyond that portal expected closure. So, you can do your application in multiple parts, but please go onto the website and use that versus calling, because I'm sure you'll be on hold for a really, really long time. And the last day to apply for this is December 21st, 2020. So if you continue to experience losses, if things are good for you now, you don't have to apply right now. Let somebody else who has experienced a loss, apply for this loan. However, if, in April, May, June, you start to see a big dip in your revenue, a big spike in your operating costs, or any other thing that, was because of coronavirus or COVID-19, you don't have to worry. It's not just a one-time, today only kind of thing. You have until December 21st, 2020 to apply. And so we're going to go through the forms step by step so that you understand what's required on each of those forms. You can keep a list of this. You can save this video. I'll provide a checklist for you, but you will need every single thing here. So just make sure you've got everything ready, so when you're applying, you're not scrambling to find this or delaying the process. So we're going to start with the SBA Form 5, which is the disaster loan application. And we're going to go through what you'll need. So as you're applying, when you first log in, you're going to be applying for economic damage. When you click that, it'll gray out a lot of boxes, so you don't need to worry about filling those grayed out boxes out. But they really want to know information about your business and information about you as a business owner or any other partners in the business. So you'll need to know what your organization type is. Are you an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, partnership, sole proprietor? You need to know that, and make sure that you're maybe creating a folder with your entity documents and all this stuff in there so you know exactly where it is. So entity document would be things like organizational documents, so like your EIN letter or your articles of organization, anything that you might have filed with the state. You need to have your legal name of your business. You'll need to have your federal EIN, which is your employer identification number. Your trade name, if your legal name of the business is different than your DBA, for example. The business phone number, the mailing address, the damaged property address. That's likely just going to be your mailing address or your physical address. The contact person for the loan. This is normally going to be you or somebody, some other owner in the business who's going to manage the process of filing for SBA loans. And alternative ways of contacting you. So emails, cell phones, things like that. You'll need to also be able to explain what you do. It asks for business activity. So for me, we provide, bookkeeping and payroll services for small business clients. Your business is your business. So be able to easily explain within a sentence of, what you do so that somebody can assess and know without having to, uncover lots of stuff about your business. You should have a quick and dirty one-sentence explanation about what you do in your business. They'll be asking the number of employees pre-disaster. And, they may follow up with the number of employees post-disaster. I know a lot of you might be laying off your employees either temporarily with a furlough, or you may, have them laid off forever. So have the number in your, on hand of pre-disaster, which you'll be putting in the form, and then post-disaster as well. You need to be able to provide the date that you were established, and you can find that on your EIN letter typically. Current management since. So for me, I started the business in 2010, so it's been the current management, which is me, since 2010. If you've had change in ownership structure, like you've added additional members to your LLC, you want to refer to that information. And if you don't remember the date, normally your state will have that information on file, and you can just look at the PDF online. This should be open to everybody. So just look for the Secretary of State. I'm in Colorado, so I would look at the Colorado Secretary of State to find those filings. Number 15 says amount of estimated loss, real estate, machinery, inventory, and leasehold improvements. This is actually grayed out, so you can just leave that blank. And then it'll ask if you own more than 50% of this entity, or are you a managing member or general partner. You need to be that person because you need to be able to sign for the loan. So make sure that you've got the person who is actually an owner of the business providing this information in the SBA portal. Next, you'll need to provide owner information for everybody who owns more than 20% of the business. So this is if you're a proprietor, a limited partner, a stockholder with more than 20% voting stock, you'll need to have everybody's information there, because if it's not just you in the business, all owners are going to need to sign, or they'll need to have some approval from your board that says that you're okay to take this loan. And the information that they're asking for about each owner is, everything about you. So what's your first name, middle name, last name? What's your title in the business? What's your percentage of ownership in the business? What's your email? What's your social security number? What's your marital status? What's your date of birth, place of birth, phone number, U.S. citizen, yay or nay, what your mailing address is, and then at the end you will confirm if you are an owner that has 50% ownership in the business. And going back to the marital status, if you are married, your spouse will need to sign the 4506T, which is the request for tax returns, if you do file a joint return. So keep that in mind. You will need to have their approval just to get the records from the IRS. Next, there's going to be some qualifying questions. So they'll need to know whether or not you filed for bankruptcy, or if you've ever been involved in a bankruptcy or insolvency proceeding. They also want to know if you have any judgments, tax liens, or pending lawsuits against you. And 18C is a mouthful, so in the past year, has a business or a listed owner been convicted of a criminal offense committed during and in connection with a riot or civil disorder or a declared disaster, or has ever been engaged in the production or distribution of any product or service that has ever been determined to be obscene by a court of contempt jurisdiction? That was a mouthful. It took me forever to record that. So likely you're not going to be a person that's going to say yes to that. If you do say yes to these questions, they're going to ask you for additional information. I don't know whether or not you're going to be officially declined based on this. My gut says yes, but they may have special circumstances for disaster loans versus normal SBA loans. So even if you have had these things, on your record, apply, just give it a chance and see if you would possibly be qualified for this loan. I'd rather, try it and be told no rather than not try and have a business fold because I just didn't feel comfortable answering those questions or felt like I didn't have a shot. 18D, if you do have an SBA loan currently, is going to be a yes. Or if you've had like a student loan, potentially it could be a yes. So has a business or listed owner ever had or guaranteed a federal loan or federally guaranteed loan? And again, they're going to ask you to provide information on this. Is a business or listed owner delinquent on any federal taxes or guaranteed federal loans? Does the owner or owner spouse or household member work for the SBA or serve as a member of SBA's SCORE, ACE, or Advisory Council? And are you currently suspended or disbarred from contracting with the federal government or receiving federal government grants or loans? So again, answer these truthfully because you get into some big time trouble if you lie about any of these answers. And 19, are you presently subject to an indictment, criminal information, arraignment, or any other means by which formal criminal charges are brought in any jurisdiction? Have you been arrested in the past 6 months for a criminal offense? Other than a minor vehicle violation, have you ever been convicted, pled guilty, pled no contest, placed on pretrial diversion, or are you on any sort of parole or probation? 20 is going to be grayed out, so it's going to ask whether or not you have physical damage, so don't worry about that. And finally, if anybody is assisting you with filling this form out, you'll need to provide their information. In the application, the SBA is going to ask about what other businesses you might have some ownership interest in. And it's important to note that they're going to require tax forms for that as well. So you'll need to sign during the application a 4506T, which allows the IRS to provide any of your tax transcripts to a loan officer or to the SBA. So be ready to provide the name, the EIN, the entity type, ownership structure, what percentage you own, for example, your title and the address of the business. So be ready for that. And once that's done, you're going to need to fill out your personal financial statement. So this is about you personally. And in this personal financial statement, they're looking at your assets and your liabilities. So assets are things that you own. Liabilities are things that you owe. Assets are going to be, cash in the bank, savings accounts, retirement accounts, the cash surrender value of life insurance, stocks and bonds, real estate. So it's going to be things like rental properties or personal properties, any of your vehicles, any other personal properties, maybe like jewelry or art, things like that, and any other assets that you may need to use as collateral for the loan. And for liabilities, you need to know what you owe out. So what are your payables? Do you have any mortgages or notes, any bills that are due? Have you taken any loans against your life insurance that has a cash value? Do you have mortgages on the real estate that you own? Do you currently owe any unpaid taxes, or are there any unpaid liabilities? So be sure that you're very clear so that you can make sure that they know exactly what your personal financial position is. And if you've got to take some time in it, I highly suggest, if you've got loans, don't just guess the loan amounts. Go directly to your lender's website. Make sure that you have the correct information. If you're making payments while this process is going on, of course you can update that information later, but you really want to give the most accurate, up-to-date information to the SBA so that they can make a good decision based on your current situation. The SBA is also going to want to know about your sources of income. So things like the salary that you earn. If you are an S Corp officer, you should be paying yourself on a W-2, which means that you have a salary, a predictable salary. So be able to substantiate that with paycheck stubs or W-2s, etc. All this is going to be funneled through to your tax return anyway. So, don't lie about your salary or try to beef it up if, last year's salary was, totally less than what this year's salary is and you're just lying right now. So if you made $50,000 in your wages last year, and now you're telling SBA that you make $300,000, they're probably going to get hip to you lying. So also going to look at your paycheck stubs to see what the year-to-dates amounts are. So don't lie about this. And then you'll need to provide a schedule of liabilities for your business. And this should be fairly easy to do if you've got your balance sheet ready. And your balance sheet is going to include all of this information. So who is a creditor? What's the amount? We can go and look at any notes that you provided to us or loan documentation to see the original date. The current balance is going to be listed on your balance sheet as well, as long as your books are up to date. Number 5, they're going to be asking about whether or not your loan is current. And your loan should be current. Most of our clients are on auto pay, where their lending bank will automatically draft any of those payments out of their account. And they're not actually cutting checks, like it's 1952 to get those payments out. So if you don't currently have auto pay set up, I highly recommend it so you never ever miss a payment. But the answer here should be yes. The maturity date will be listed on the original loan documents, especially if you've got an SBA loan. They will note, the original date that you've taken the loan, the original balance, the maturity date, all really clearly in their documentation. So dig that up if you don't have it right in front of you. You should know how much you pay and whether or not you pay it per month or per year. That will affect, your eligibility or your debt to income ratio, because they want to actually see what do you owe this month and what do you have coming in. And finally, they'll want to know how it was secured. So if you've already pledged other collateral, they'll need to know that. So for example, if you have your house pledged as collateral, you need to put that information in box 9. SBA Form P019 is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Supporting Information. And you'll need to download this form and complete the document and then re-upload the form. And I'm going to say I have applied for the SBA disaster loan. I tried to upload it. It took me like 30 minutes to get that sucker through. So be very patient. There's a lot of people who are trying to upload things. I'm sure the servers are like jam-packed with lots of traffic right now. So if you can't get it through and you need to do something else, hopefully you've got a folder saved in Box, Dropbox on your local drive where you just have this ready to upload. But just make sure that you do get it accepted before you move on, and there'll be a green box that says you did it. And this form is going to ask you, was this business in operation in 1 year prior to the disaster? They're going to ask about the gross revenues for the 12-month period prior to the disaster. Cost of goods sold for 12 months period prior to the disaster. They're looking here for cash flow. So what's your gross profit margin? They'll want to know what your lost rents are due to the disaster if you are a commercial or residential property owner only. So if your job is to, rent event spaces, or you've got, 25 Airbnbs, this is where you would enter those losses. If you've received any other compensation, so if you've received grants or loans, etc., make sure that you put that here. And finally, they have a note about that you need to fit the size standard. And I'm going to say that the people who are watching this YouTube video are probably in the size standard. The size standards are pretty big. But if you're wondering if you fit in the size standard, all you have to do is, and I'll provide this link to you in the comments, but you'll need to go online and understand first, what is your NAICS code, which is your North American Industry Classification Code. And in that, you'll go online to a website, which I'll provide to you, and you'll see what the revenue amount is, the maximum revenue amount, and the maximum employee count is. And broadly, if you have more than 500 employees, you're probably not a small business. You're definitely not a small business. And revenue, I'm going to guess that if you're, I looked for the bookkeeping, I think it said like under $22 million a year. You're going to probably fit here. So you can go in, get your NAICS code, put your information in the website, and then just quickly see what the caps are. But I'm going to say that many of you are under those caps. And the next thing you'll do is the 4506T form, which is a request for tax return transcripts. So this gives the SBA, again, the permission to go to the IRS and directly ask for your forms. And they're going to ask for the last 3 years of tax returns for your business and the last 2 personally. And I've listened to, again, lots of information from the SBA, and they have directly said in other webinars that they may not disqualify you if you've not been in business for 3 years, which is why I think that you're going to be filling out the previous form. So again, if your business is new-ish, but over a year, I still think that you should try to apply for this loan. Why not, to see if you can qualify for it. So don't feel discouraged if you're not, a more mature business who's been around for a lot longer. If you've experienced losses, please make sure that you're putting in your application now, because you want to make sure that you can stay afloat, keep your people afloat, keep supporting your community, as long as humanly possible. And a lot of people are asking about turn times. So the turn times on average in a disaster are 4 weeks. And that does not mean that this is, the cold hard facts, that everybody here who applies and is approved is going to have that 4-week turn time. I know that the SBA has a lot of people applying for loans right now. And thankfully, there's another stimulus package that was just approved, and hopefully we'll get some additional funds to some business owners through the SBA or through other channels. So if you don't get a yes in 4 weeks, just keep checking up on it. You want to make sure that you're continuing to go back to the SBA site and just looking at your approval or where you are in the approval process. If the SBA lender or your representative is asking further information, please make sure that you're getting that to them as quickly as possible so that you can get the funding as quickly as possible. And typically, when they are funding for disaster loans, they do provide the first $25,000 within 5 days after the approval. And I'm going to say, take that with a grain of salt. Things are changing every single day, and I know that they're really overloaded. They probably don't have enough staff right now or capacity to help every single business owner. So be patient, continue to look for other lending opportunities while you are applying for this disaster loan. You can apply for other SBA loans, which have other turnaround times. So the SBA 7A loan, which I'll be talking about other SBA loans in another video, but you can apply for that. That normally has a week turnaround time. That's going to be more for a business who, despite the disaster, is still cash flowing. The limits there, I believe, are $5 million. So you have a bit more flexibility in the range of funds that you can receive. You can also do an express loan or a small loan. We'll be posting a lot of information about how to apply for grants locally. And then, so just look for other ways to get money in the door. Don't think that if you only have to wait for this disaster loan, because that's really not the truth. And then finally, take your time. You may be kicked to the back of the line if you've made a mistake in your application, which would be really heartbreaking as a business owner to have to go through the whole thing again and restart the whole waiting process. So get your stuff together and do it right the first time. And please reach out to me if you have any questions about how to complete any of the forms to apply for the COVID-19 disaster loan assistance. I want to make sure that you have everything in front of you, so I'll put the blog with detailed instructions in the comments. I'll also link to all of the paper forms that the SBA provides. But please note that it is going to be way, way faster if you go online and apply on their portal. I know that there's going to be some slowdowns. You're going to have to click, again and again to get things to load. You may have to come back at off times to get your application to go through, but make sure that you're doing things right, that you fully understand what you're doing, and just know that, it's okay if you get the loan and you don't need it anymore. You can say no. If you need more funds later, you can always apply for more funds within the disaster program. So, if something happens later on down the line, you're not going to be totally boned. Continue to apply for grants. But again, just use this as a resource. I want to make sure that every single business owner is able to stay afloat. I truly do believe that small business has an enormous impact on the local community and economy. So when a business stays open, they are able to continue to pay their employees, they can pay their suppliers. That money goes out into the community and ripples out locally. And if that business dries up, your local community can seriously suffer. So do not hesitate to get these loan documents filled out. If you feel like you might not be qualified for it, just do it. Just give it a chance. Make sure that you're giving your business and your employees every chance of survival. So reach out to me if you need anything. Thanks.